Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Scott Luton and Allison Giddens here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. Allison, how are we doing this afternoon?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
We're doing wonderful. Did you see just how I went from morning to afternoon in like the snap of a finger
2
there?
seconds. Well, sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes the days go by really fast.
You are right. Well, hey, today, speaking of moving through a lot of content very quickly, we've got an outstanding conversation teed up. We're going to be talking about the seemingly endless peak season for retailers in recent months, new innovative partnerships, how technology is driving a lot of that, and how technology is really driving enhanced customer experience these days. And that's just tip of the iceberg, a lot more here. So you ready to go, Allison?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive right in and welcome our guests here today. First up, we've got a wonderful friend of the show, repeat guest, rock and roll star, Shan Muthuvelu, CEO at UCBOS. Shan, how you doing?
I'm doing really good, Scott. It's great to be here. Though Atlanta is really cold and chilly outside, but you always make us, warm.
I appreciate that, Shan. You've made my day.
Good.
And I've noticed, by the way, you brought one heck of a guest and friend with you. But man, you've been doing a lot of speaking, a lot of problem solving. You've been out there on the move across industry. So we look forward to getting an update. So welcome in, Shan. And let's introduce who is joining you here today. Venkat Gopalan, Chief Digital Officer, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Data Officer with Belcorp. Venkat, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Scott. Pleasure to be here and sharing some experience and learnings, and looking forward to an amazing conversation today.
We are too. I tell you, I really enjoyed the pre-show conversation with you both. Already learned a couple of things just in that. And speaking of warm, because Shan made my day a minute ago, you're in Miami, where the weather is probably a lot nicer than the 30-degree day we had here in the Metro Atlanta area. Venkat.
Yeah, I can't complain. So Miami has been in the news for good and bad. So I would not mention the bad part of it. At least the weather has been good.
Well, at least the weather down in Miami is almost as hot as the supply chain industry here lately. And
absolutely no denial about that.
That's right. Amen. So looking forward to diving into both of your expertise and as well as a little bit of your story here today. So where we're going to start initially, which I want to do a little level setting, right? Of course, Shan's been with us before, but let's give Shan, if you don't mind, for folks who may have missed those earlier episodes, just tell us a little bit about UCBOS and what the company does.
Thanks, Scott. So UCBOS is a no-code supply chain cloud software. And we want enterprises to imagine their supply chain in an innovation time loop. That means we want them to go reinvent, reimagine, and redesign their supply chain continuously with zero cost and zero code, right? But with lots of value. And we are trying to change, how enterprises, transform themselves, and we are challenging the status quo. And we are in the making of, 6 years, and now for the last 1 year, we are doing really good penetrating the market.
Love that. So it's like a dynamic interpretation of the organization is what UCBOS is powering. Allison, is that what you heard too?
Yep, definitely. It's not about the keep doing what you've been doing. It's something different.
That's right. All right. So Venkat, welcome to Supply Chain Now. It's your first appearance here today. We've been doing our homework a little bit on you. And as we mentioned in the pre-show, you've had some big wins here lately as well. So tell us a little bit about Belcorp and what the company does.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for the opportunity. Belcorp is a beauty cosmetic leader in LATAM. We are the leader in the 90% of the market we are in, total of 13 countries. Belcorp started way back in 1969 as a beauty and cosmetic company, focused predominantly in direct selling. The mission was to actually enable women entrepreneurs so they're able to be distribution partners and extension of Belcorp. In the last 2-3 years, we have focused more into direct-to-consumer model and moving the consultants more of a beauty advisor and influencer and enabling her and providing digital tools to manage effective relationship with the consumers as such. We have 3 brands, Jessica, Label, and Saison, targeting different consumer demographics. Our plan is to expand eventually to other markets. That's why we started the office in Miami, most probably in North America, as well as in Southeast Asia, given Southeast Asia being the center of gravity for beauty.
Wow, I love that unique history, and it sounds like growth is the order of the day at Belcorp.
Yeah.
So, Allison, on that, we've got a great conversation teed up. We know a little more about our guests now. Where are we going next with Shan and Venkat?
Yes. So now that we know what drives them during the day, I'd like to know how they're able to unplug. So, I mean, how, as far as recharging your batteries on the weekend, when you're not living and breathing supply chain, Shan, what do you have going on?
Great. If it is not, UCBOS work, what's going on with me is one is we are doing some construction in terms of bringing up new offices for UCBOS. So that's definitely fun stuff because procuring the land and redesigning office space, and that's been fun. And also I've realized this is all going to go on forever. I don't think I can ever take my eyes off of supply chain. So recently I've started giving some of my wealth and some of my time back to the community. So I've started from my hometown building an orphanage. So that, I also have a journey towards, something, fulfilling for me and my family.
Wow, Shan, that is remarkable. I think in your last appearance, you didn't share that with us. Is that a really new initiative?
Yes. A few years ago, my father passed away. So then I thought, what, I'm not the young son anymore. I have a responsibility that I have to do, and I have to live up to his expectations, and I have to continue his legacies. That's a reason it changed.
That is awesome. That's incredible. That legacy leaving, that's a very neat thing. And I'm sure your father is very proud. I'd love to hear from Venkat. What do you have going on in terms of recharging your batteries and anything that you're participating in that gets you excited?
I know we are living in a very unprecedented time with pandemic, but I had a baby girl in June of 2020. And so she's 18 months old. So she takes majority of my time over the weekend. I'm learning every single day being a father.
Congratulations.
So that being aside, the second part is I spend some time advising some of the startups based in Bay Area. And then I read a lot. So I have a huge library at home, even though I have a Kindle, but I'm a fan of having actual physical books. So I do read a lot. So those are the 3 that keeps me busy during the weekends.
Oh, that's incredible. So knowing that you all have very, very busy lives, whether it's work related, home related, community related, and everything in between, where as we kind of enter this hectic end of year time, this transitional time into the beginning of 2022, what's a key supply chain observation or 2? And I imagine you may have a couple, only because it sounds like your hobbies kind of overlap work, and that speaks to me, because that tells me that you really enjoy enough of what you do that it becomes part of your weekends too. So I don't know, give us some insight on your key supply chain observations.
Maybe I'll take the question first. So when you look at supply chain, is always looked at a cost center, in last several decades. And I think no other verticals or an area is more disruptive, has been disrupted or more disrupted in the last few years, especially the post-COVID area. When we look at that, whether it's just-in-time manufacturing or lean manufacturing changes to that, whether you look at container shortages, global trading issues, you look at port congestion, has been like every disruption that you can see. I think supply chain has had in 2020 and as well as 2021. And hopefully we'll get to the endemic because the COVID situation also creates more disruption. And the consumer shift moving to more of the digital creates an enormous amount of challenges for the several organizations. Compared to the digital native organizations like Amazon or eBay, traditional brick and mortar moving their sales into online requires a huge shift in terms of supply chain. And that means the focus of the organization beyond the customer experience is the supply chain, the investments that's driving across the board, making sure that we are able to deliver the product at the right time, at the right place becomes even more critical from that standpoint. So no longer I would say supply chain is a cost center. Supply chain is a more competitive advantage for every organization in the new world. And obviously it has its own set of challenges that we need to solve for. The decades of certain methods and processes that we have done has to be relooked at and reinvented. But I think this is a fantastic opportunity for organizations, professionals to be part of the supply chain transformation.
Great. That's I think you're right. I think it's a whole different world, a whole different way of looking at supply chain and its role in industry across the board.
Agreed.
Shan, what about you?
Allison, really quick. I like how what he finished on is that supply chain. I think one of the silver linings, and you got to look hard sometimes in the last 2 or 3 years to really find them. But one of them is certainly how the visibility that supply chain has received is going to help it get the talent that it needs to come in an industry to drive some of the transformation that Venkat just spoke about and we'll be talking about kind of throughout today's show. So I love that perspective, Venkat. Sorry, Allison, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, you're
Venkat
right.
got my juices got going there for a second. Supply chain and talent, we got to have a lot more of it.
Yep, you got that right. Shan, what about you?
Great. So, living and breathing, coming from a Manhattan Associates, right, then just learning Oracle and others, supply chain is always challenging and fascinating, right? Whether it's port congestion or labor shortages. But the last few months, what is really exciting me is the education needed for the enterprises on new technologies. I feel that it's over because they now understand, they can go to all cloud, they can go to all AWS, Google, Azure, and they can put, cloud solutions, they can build cloud solutions, they can embed AML, they understand NoSQL, no code, low code, all kinds of new stuff, right? So that means they are ready for the, if you take, Pfizer, right, you don't have to wait for 3 years for a vaccine. We can bring it out in 6 months. That means it's a new way of innovating things. Likewise, enterprises, even Venkat always brings it up, when we say, I have these 5 new things, he will say, what about the 6th one and 7th one, right? He is ahead in asking the cutting edge technologies and they are bold right now to try new things. And that's exciting time, right? Yep.
I love that. A lot less constraints, Allison, is what I heard in part of Shane's answer there, right?
Yep, just rocking and rolling, getting the show on the road.
Okay, so we're going to get a little deeper. We're going to get more into retail here in a second. But before we do, Venkat, we've got to give you a big high five because as part of our team's due diligence, whenever we get a guest here at Supply Chain Now, we uncovered that here in recent months, I think it was last summer, that you were recognized with a Digital Disruptors Award speaking of the transformations, in the transformation category. So really quick, what did that mean to you? How special was that?
I think for me, the recognition is more for my team, more than me. When you look at a job of a leader is about enabler. So I'm just a face for them. And so I'm happy to see that my team has been recognized. And I think and the transformation can be done by anyone. Even though majority of my experience has been US based, last 2.5 years I took this role for Belcorp from Latin America. So we were able to actually put Belcorp at the center of the because of this award. So I'm glad and happy for the team more than for me.
Love that. And for some reason, Allison, I just knew he was going to take the team approach as we talked about his recognition with that award. I love that sign of a great leader. Okay. So let's do some more heavy lifting. Let's get into retail and kind of looking back a little bit with this recent peak season, pretty unique peak season. To many would say the peak season that never ended. So I want to talk about customer promise. So I want to pose a couple questions to y'all, and Venkat, will stick with you. What's your take on customer promise? How are we holding up on the customer promise reliability score? And what are some of the challenges we're facing on meeting customer promise? So Venkat, your thoughts.
Wow. Okay. That's a tough one. So let me try to crack the nut. So when you look at, obviously, I look at the customer promise within the customer experience aspect of it. Now the digital transformation has turned into digital acceleration. That means that consumer immediacy needs has been a huge challenge for the last 18 months. And as I talked about before, digital native companies are actually built for this. Amazon has actually prepared for the last 15 years for this event. So they were able to realize and able to scale. And when you look at the traditional brick and mortar and other companies, it's a shift. You're flipping a switch on a day in March of 2020, and you're saying, hey, we are going to go online. And because of all the shutdowns, and that means people are buying online. And that means the experience throughout it is very critical. From the consumer experience, always fulfilling the product and having the right product at the right time becomes even more critical. When you look at from grocery delivery to restaurant delivery, you look at the essentials and non-essentials. I think it's across the board that the digital acceleration has happened. So one of the key stats, if you really look at the e-commerce growth in US for the last 10 years has been achieved in the first 3 to 6 months in 2020. That's a tremendous leap that we look at. Software is an easy part to scale. The long pole in the tent is always the supply chain, right? Because you have all of these things from planning, production, you look at manufacturing, all of this have to be taken into consideration to fulfill customer promise, including customer service as well. And so that created a huge challenge for several companies, several verticals, which are all digital natives who are not prepared for this event. Even I think Amazon has to do several things to make that happen. I would say it has been extremely challenging in the last 18 months, and especially last year. I would say, given all the changes, including the chip shortage, the container shortage, the Suez Canal impact that had. So we are going to live with this supply chain impact for quite a while, for next 2 to 3 years, that to recoup, to come back to the 2019 level. And obviously, consumer habits are going to change. Some of them are long-term and some of them are short-term. We are all human beings. We are all social. Obviously, there is a pent-up demands of last 18 months that we wanted to meet with people, but the digital convenience is here to stay. So the things, for example, I'm not going to go for grocery delivery because I'm so used to Instacart, right? Certain convenience that people are going to look at and saying, okay, I'm going to use the digital aspect of it. So the increase that we see in 18 months is not going to be sustainable in terms of the demand that I see. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm speaking from my intuition here and some data points. Obviously, but definitely we do see that organizations have to rethink the entire supply chain. That includes not on reliance on China. Dual sourcing becomes very critical aspect of it. Nearshoring becomes important aspect of it, or even regional supply chain becomes a very important aspect to look at that. And also from sourcing, production, planning, customer service, every aspect has to be looked at for the customer promise, right? And that what it means is that for an organization, right, any typical enterprise has legacy systems. Systems are built for a specific purpose, right? Whether it's warehouse management systems or planning systems, and all of them requires data that needs to create visibility. You need instant visibility to make quicker decision. The speed is the name of the game in terms of consumer immediacy as well for the business to react. When you look at traditionally the digital transformation, everybody has their own speed time, 3-4 years. Now, whether it is a retail, CPG, every vertical has to be on the digital acceleration. So everybody's pressed to do that, right? And that creates a tremendous amount of pressure on competition to stand out across a crowd and from the competition. And that requires that your systems have to scale. You need to have a clear data across all of these different disparate or siloed systems. And that requires a whole different thinking, right? No organization is going to come back and saying, hey, I'm going to re-platform. There is no silver bullet across different parts of the supply chain. We need a solution which brings the data across all of this disparate system without disrupting the existing investment of the companies, and able to provide the insights, what's happening in a real time, anywhere, anytime, to make those decisions. And I think that's the need of the hour, if I would say. from a customer promise and the reliability standpoint.
Okay. Going way back to what you said about halfway through your answer, that instant visibility. We're getting closer and closer. In some cases, it's already here. But I would argue, and then y'all can probably offer up your observations with global enterprise and some of our bigger supply chains, that becomes much more challenging, much more challenging. Heck, visibility in the same month can be challenging in some of these global enterprises, as we've seen here in the last couple of years, in particular, as some of our sourcing decisions have been have come into question. So I appreciate your Venkat offering up your perspective first. I want to go to Shan next. Shan, customer promise, reliability, scoring, challenges we're seeing. What comes to mind for you, Shan?
So as Venkat was saying, right, the customer promise reliability has really gone down, right? Because, right, whether it is a supply chain disruption, right, or even a company which is really growing because of this situation, right, it's taking this as an opportunity. But the challenges are still challenges for them, meaning, they were not able to scale up. They were, they're short of, labor. Then their processes are not fully automated. And trying a different, delivery model or a product line, right? They're not, skilled in terms of solutioning, in terms of engineering, in terms of processes to handle that. So the reliability scores are sort of going down, right? So those are attributable to, how inflexible your systems are, how inflexible your production lines are, how inflexible your processes are. But Venkat is also bringing up a great point, right? Your data is not real time, right? You don't have the real time visibility as an enterprise, not just within your enterprise. It could be your suppliers, supply chain. It could be their, supplier supply chain, right? So the trend is going to be, we need to increase the customer reliability score, right? Enterprises have to pay attention, but it cannot be done in the traditional way, meaning I am going to integrate with every system. I am going to, rebuild new systems, right? And I'm going to still take the 4 to 5 years to, go with one ERP, go with one system, right? Even after mergers and acquisitions, I'm going to, follow one process, right? It's not going to work. That's what we find out. How can you can you imagine, right? As if in a time loop, I want to redo my supply chain, scenarios, supply chain orchestration, supply chain strategies differently in a very, very short period, looking for the right outcome. If the outcome is bad, change it. But you don't have years, right? Maybe 4 to 6 weeks, you try something. If it works, stick to it and enhance it. If not, drop it and move on. But you can't spend, unlimited resources and unlimited money on it, right? You need to do it at a very low cost, no cost, right? Low code, no code. That should be the trend you got to go. And they have to increase the, customer reliability score. If not, they're going to be, taken out by Amazon and other big companies, right? So as I don't know if you noticed, Venkat said, right, 90%, right? That's a market share that he's talking about. So you don't want the world where there are only few companies, right? So, to encourage new companies going up, they need to be very creative and innovative.
I love that for a couple different reasons. And Alice, I want to get your take on what Venkat and Shan have shared. But, we don't have the luxury of time, and we don't have the luxury of and there once was the luxury of overanalyzing what we wanted to do and how we wanted to pivot the aircraft carrier or the battleship and slowly turn. All that is out the window, as both our guests are pointing out. Also, I love how Shan talked about from years to weeks. I tell you, sometimes it feels like we've got maybe days or mere hours to make a decision in today's environment. But Allison, what stood out to you?
There were two things, and I kept taking notes, but the two of my favorites were, Venkat, you said something that I feel like it's so succinctly put that you have said what I've been thinking all along. And that is, you talked about those pent up social needs that we have post pandemic, or now that we're in this endemic stage, or whatever you want to call it. But the digital convenience is here to stay. And I think that is key, because we keep thinking that we're going to go back to some sort of quote normal, where things are back to less digital, which that's not the case. So I think that that kind of frame is really important. And then Shan talked about how there was the customer delivery scores in general, and talked about how that the scores themselves being kind of the driver as to what to do next. And in my industry in manufacturing, as we look at these KPIs, it always concerns me because I watch as our suppliers will have certain standards, and as long as they meet them, they're okay. And it doesn't seem like that bar ever moves. So I would be wary of folks falling the other way. So as time goes on, and if time, to your point, Scott, if we're looking at hours and days for really time crunches instead of years in terms of watching and measuring,
Right.
if we're looking at these short time periods, now we have to be willing to move that bar just as quickly as it can move.
That's right. Completely agree there. All right. So I want to ask one more quick follow-up question before we get into, Alice is going to be talking with both of y'all about some really cool, interesting partnerships we've seen. DULDM. We love our acronyms around here in supply chain. I was in the military way back when. That teed me up perfectly for supply chain because we love our acronyms in the military as well. But I'm learning, we're all going to learn a new one here today. At least maybe I am. Allison, maybe you too. I don't know. So Shan, DULDM, Dynamic Unified Logical Data Model. What are we talking about?
Great. Yes, I know we were keeping it so business. I'll try to answer that. So, as you know, right, the enterprises every enterprise is unique, right? In terms of the ERP that they use, or the supply chain modules that they use, or any legacy applications that they use, right? They're very unique in the way they operate in terms of solutions. And behind the scenes for those solutions, there are rigid database models, right? They call them as canonical models or relational models, right? They're very rigid. And there's only one way to operate that model in terms of visualizations, visibility, integrations, right? Mobile frameworks, or any logic that you build, you have to build on the rigid model. But the moment you want enterprises to collaborate with everybody in a faster fashion, that means you cannot be operating on a rigid data model. You should be operating on a flexible data model where you can understand anybody's supply chain data model in a day. So if you have to understand somebody else's supply chain data model in a day, then it has to be logical and dynamic. That's what the dynamic unified logical data model is. Unless a platform which enables a dynamic logical data model is readily available for an enterprise, they cannot bring what Venkat is talking about, that instant visibility that is real time, not a data warehouse or a data lake, right? That's all data. If you want instantaneous data, which is accurate, which you can make decisions on, right? Whether it is changing your production schedule or changing your delivery mechanisms or alternate fulfillment strategies or anything that you want to do in supply chain, right? So you need an approach called dynamic unified logical data model.
Okay, I love that. It sounds like to me, in the non-technologist speak, I'm limited to that, folks. Powering data fluency and integration, which allows there to be quick understanding so that you can add value and power partnerships and maybe better use of data to meet some of these smarter, to be able to rather make quicker, smarter decisions faster. Does that make sense? Did I get that in layperson's terms there, Shan? Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Wonderful. Whew. I feel like I just got some kind of data certification here, Alice. You're laughing though. We're going to be talking.
You did. You have been certified in ULDM plus.
All right. So moving from that, we're going to be talking in this next segment, Allison, about what can you do with all of what Venkat and Shan have been talking about. How is it playing out in the industry? So Allison, where are we going next?
So it got me thinking about the Ulta brands inside of Target. So we're talking about some interesting partnerships here. So you got your Ulta brands inside of Target. Kohl's that they added, Sephora shops inside their stores, Bed Bath and Beyond and Kroger looking at the home and baby product integration there. So looking out on your thought, Venkat, on some of those interesting partnerships and kind of your insight.
I think when you really look at it, it's an ecosystem play, right? And I think that's very crucial for success of these companies. To be told, I was with Sephora when Sephora inside JCPenney happened. No, that was way back, like 10, 15 years when we did that. Obviously, JCPenney is a different story. I will not talk about that right now, but more around Ulta and Target. And then when you look at Sephora and Kohl's, I think one, I think it's around the footprint increase, right? So when you look at the brands like Sephora, that is a win-win situation both for Kohl's as well as for Sephora, because they can actually reach out to the number of stores that they can reach out to. When you look at Sephora, is right now around 300 to 400 stores footprint, and when you look at the Kohl's, it's like thousands of stores that you have. So your immediate increase in footprint is from a scaling standpoint. Software is easy to scale. Creating a physical footprint is hard to do, right? And especially having this partnership will help drive that foot traffic to the stores, because you're bringing in new additional consumer segments into Kohl's, right? Because of Sephora loyalist, and that also increases other buying and other categories that the Kohl's can win as well, right? And then for Sephora, is basically a footprint increase that they're able to go quickly in terms of scaling from a store infrastructure standpoint. Now, the second aspect of this, when I look at overall, is around interoperability, right? When it's easier said than done saying that, okay, Sephora inside Kohl's or Ulta inside Target, is also how does the inventory of those systems get managed? How do you make sure buy online, pick up at store, for example, that opens Sephora to have a pickup or a returns within Kohl's or within Target, because you have a footprint increase tremendously in terms of 3 or 4x, 5x scale. And so this creates this whole omnichannel capability for whether it's Sephora or Ulta, or whether even Kruger's and Bed
Bath and Beyond, right?
Bed Bath and Beyond. Sorry about that.
Or
that creates a different business model. No, it's not just foot traffic. It is also all of this omni-channel capability: buy online, pick up at store, or buy online, fulfill from store, or the returns that you can do, or the lockers you can do. So that creates tremendous opportunity across the board from in terms of the consumer. So you are at where the consumers are, right? That's the nirvana that we want to be. We want to be in the channel where the consumer is. I would say consumer is the channel, not necessarily we generally differentiate that. And that creates opportunity, but also challenges. When you look at the challenges, how do you integrate two different systems from Kohl's and Sephora, the inventory management, and looking to do all of these different variations. And we are talking about systems which need to interoperate. No, that's the foundation for us to work on this partnership. And what we are seeing is just tip of the iceberg. Because there is more partnership that's going to happen. You see Sephora with Instacart using that, and all of this partnership will continue to play, because and this is an ecosystem play. So that's a good thing overall for the businesses doing that. And obviously there is more that's going to happen that I see. And also it helps, it's a win-win situation. Second, it puts from a technology perspective challenges. How do we interoperate between these different companies, different systems? Basically, we don't want to create our org structure to the consumer. No,
right.
Sephora inside Kohl's should be like a normal store that they buy, right? Whether the loyalty system should work, my POS system should work, my inventory should work. So that becomes very critical in terms of the consumer experience. And so I think that is a challenge that to be solved for, if I have to say, beyond the opportunity.
All right. I got to make a quick comment before Allison, you go to Shan here, but can you imagine with this Bed Bath and Beyond and it's, I think it's a subsidiary, Bye Bye Baby. Your grocery store visits or your significant other's grocery store visits have the potential of getting a lot more expensive. Hey, honey, getting milk, eggs, and a crib, or whatever it is. I mean, we're going to have to put some constraints on the budget.
I think that's what they're counting on.
Probably so. I imagine that, and the convenience to be able to pick it up right there, right? Okay.
So sorry, Scott, if I put my family man hat, yes, I agree with you, but my businessman hat, I think that's not something I want to admit to.
Well, hey, Venkat, this is going to be a great marriage between Bed Bath and Beyond and
Yeah,
Kroger.
exactly.
If y'all have those down, and I think
Yeah.
Kroger is nationwide, if not
Yes,
North
it
America.
is. It is.
All right, Allison, we're gonna get Sean's take next, right?
Yes. Yes. So Sean, so what do you think about these partnerships and what's some of your insights?
So, look, a few years ago, when these things were happening, and especially definitely from Amazon, Whole Foods, certain things worked and certain things did not work. So we were wondering, right, how this is all going to work, right? But a couple of months ago, I attended a conference in Atlanta, right, like a supply chain conference, CSCMP, and I was surprised. Even competitors want to work together to optimize transportation, because they're saying, why do I send 2 trucks half empty, right, during the peak time in New York City, even though I'm competing, right? We could both save money. So as Venkat pointed out, this is just the starting point. A lot of players may come together and operate together, but in terms of there is in terms of solutioning, right? Pitching our product as UCBOS. We're talking about the logical data models, right? The platform supports multiple data models to coexist. So this is really music to our ears when 5 companies says, can we collaborate in a single platform, 5 different data models, and can we control who can see the data at the same time? If required for transportation reasons or fulfillment, I want to combine that for optimization reasons, we can do that. So whenever these partnerships are happening, we are definitely taking advantage of that. And as Venkat said, this is going to be more and more happening, so that you don't have to, you don't have to be, I don't know if you remember, right? There was a company called Sears, right? And I still remember they got 2 million square footage warehouses and multi-million automation investments, but they were operating as one company. They were not, right? But if they let other companies utilize their space, utilize their supply chain, utilize their delivery models, right? Maybe they would have survived. So now, right? New ways of doing business.
New ways of doing business, and I've got Sears to thank for selling me my first 3 CD changer stereo way back in the day, Allison. One other thing, quick comment before we move into artificial intelligence, machine learning. The other day I saw UPS, right, big old global brand, put out a corporate video kind of celebrating peak season, getting through it and celebrating the workforce that made it happen, right? Well, to Sean's point about these big brands that are natural competitors, but kind of collaborating, there's a moment in a UPS video where a FedEx delivery driver and a UPS delivery driver are basically giving each other a high five in a piece that UPS is promoting. And, at the end of the day, it's a 3-second clip, but that is in my view, that's a beautiful thing, right? You can compete, but it can be co-opetition at times, as many of these transportation companies have done with big initiatives like the vaccine distribution. So, all right. So from here, we want to get kind of moving from the innovative partnerships we're seeing, which we're probably going to see a lot more of in the months ahead. Let's talk more about artificial intelligence, machine learning. It certainly seems to be the golden age of AI and ML. I don't know if they call it ML, but regardless, the golden age for these things. So I want to start with you, Venkat. When it comes to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and its current state of adoption in the retail industry, speak to that for a second, and then also speak to what do you think is holding it back from more widespread adoption?
I think you rightfully said we are in the golden age of computing. I also say that to my team, we are in the Cambrian explosion of AI. AI is like as disruptive as steam engine is, as disruptive as internet is, as disruptive as mobile phone is. And I think this is it's going to be very pervasive, whether we notice or not. When you use Spotify, you're looking at the recommendation, you're looking at the list and all of that. So it's already there across the board for the last, I would say, last 10 years. And because of the cloud computing costs, because the storage cost has reduced, the amount of data that we are getting, I think we are able to run several sophisticated machine learning algorithms, which was not possible 20 years back, right? And that's the key. I think the stars are lining up right now. And what that means is that now AI is accessible to everyone, which was previously only to like Amazon or Facebook or Microsoft. Now what's happening is that this created an explosion of AI startups across the board. who are bringing in tools and capabilities for enterprise to take advantage of it. So it's becoming a level playing field overall, right? So it's not just with Facebook and Microsoft and Google of the world. Right now, they're also actually contributing to the community. They're sharing that open source. So I think it's benefiting generally across the board. Now, within retail, when you look at it, it has a full. When we look at a company value chain, starting from your brand building all the way to your post-purchase consumer experience, AI and machine learning is going to be pervasive across the board, both from a revenue standpoint as well as from an efficiency and productivity standpoint. And there was a study that I saw, I think by 2025 or 2026, 30 to 40% of the revenue will be AI or ML driven, right? That's where we are going overall. And then that, when you look at the efficiency in terms of automation, in terms of, I think Shan talked about a little bit about the manual aspect that the companies are doing. So right. You can create efficiency, the speed that we need in terms of decision making. And I believe that we are in a great time in terms of leveraging AI. The technology got sophisticated. I think it's creating a level playing field. We get AI startups, the investments. If you really look at in the last 10 months, the amount of investment in AI startup has been exploding, crazy. Right. You know? And the number of companies are going public is also great. And I think that creates a momentum. Now, with respect to how well the retail aspect of it, I think it's, if I have to give a general view, I think it has started in more on the personalization, recommendation, using and demand forecasting. I think some are on demand sensing and demand shaping capabilities. So I think some companies are really in advanced stage, and some companies are actually in the early stage of leveraging AI and ML. Now, what with respect to adoption challenges, no? So AI and ML is not a technology problem. It's a business problem, meaning that how are the business able to take advantage of AI and rethink their business model, rethink their day-to-day job. How do you, for example, a planning or a merchandising making decision through intuition versus an AI ML providing a recommendation of what the right product portfolio, what should be the right pricing, because it can look at millions of data points and give you a recommendation. I think this is a pricing that you need to look at, right, from a dynamic pricing standpoint, which takes several days or months for a planning person to do. So that means the shift is we wanted the employees to focus on the higher order bit, not the manual things. No, that means a shift in working towards the employees. Hey, you're going to make strategic decisions, and let's do the machine do what it does really well. No, able to go over vast amount of data and able to give you the recommendation and the shift that needs to happen. So that is a first fundamental in terms of reskilling and upskilling our employees to take advantage of AI. Second, in terms of automation, and automation is always looked at, hey, it's going to take my job or not. I think that's what I think automation is going to enhance human decisions, right? In terms of the scale in which it can provide and the time in which it can provide. So the employees can actually focus on more strategic work. So I see it's more of an augmented intelligence, not necessarily a replacement intelligence. The third is the skill and talent gap. And even though AI startups are giving the tools, AI requires a different mindset, and if you look at the data science is one of the hottest role, and recruiting and retaining the talent is pretty hard. It's an employee market, no? So that's a challenge for any traditional enterprise of taking AI adoption overall. And the fourth important point is AI ethics. I think we all heard about 5 months back what happened with Facebook and Twitter in terms of all the misinformation, how AI machine learning needs to be removing the bias. Whether it's gender bias or data bias, so able to have AI ethics is very critical. You see in Europe, actually, they're very strict about the AI ethics. So that is going to be a pretty important aspect from an adoption standpoint. How do we ethically adopt AI? You know, we look at the deep fakes that's coming in. Someone can actually make a video of me as so I'm speaking. You know, so those things that we need to take into consideration from a mis or disinformation perspective, and have ethical aspect of AI utilization is going to be. But AI is a big umbrella. Machine learning is one aspect of it. You have computer vision. You look at Tesla. You pretty much can drive without automated driving. That hopefully the nirvana will happen in the next few years. And across, even when you look at the computer vision, the amount of thing that's happening is breathtaking, right? And we are in the inflection of having, I think Shan briefly talked about some of the automation robots in distribution center.
Right.
And when you look at the amount of automation that's happening, it's just tremendous, including when you look at drones and stuff like that. So I don't want to throw a lot of technology terms here, but
it's breathtaking.
It's
it
fascinating.
Is breathtaking.
Well, remember, no, but Scott, you already have your DULDM++ certification. So you should know this.
Well, folks, the joke's on y'all. This isn't Scott. This is a computer animated image leading interview here today. All right. Well, one quick point, and Venkat shared a lot there. Basically, a certification of itself in his answer. I love how you dissected kind of the whole situation. But one really important point we hear time and time again from savvy folks, savvy technologists, was one of the points he made. It's not a technology challenge. It's a business challenge, right? And I would add to, and Shan, we'll come to you next, but I would add to, what is holding AI and ML and more computing back is that shiny object syndrome, right? Leaders are getting it, they're buying it, they're budgeting for it, and they're throwing it over to the team, and there's no results, there's no engagement, right? When you make a really strong business case around the right technology at the right time, with the right problem, with the right objective, with the right solution, and the right return, that's the secret sauce, right? That's the secret sauce. So I love that point. It's a business case. It's not technology. So Shan, on that note, I want to stick with you here for a second. And Allison, I'll come to you. I'd love to get your take on what Venkat and Shan shared here in just a second. But let's stick with current adoption, what's holding back more adoption. And then I'm going to give one very specific example in a minute. But speak to that, Shan, if you would.
Oh, definitely. So Venkat is from a retail industry, right? A lot of retailers doing a lot of AI ML. But I want to share a story. I think end of November or beginning part of December. This is a food manufacturing company, like top 50 in the US, right? They're distributing to schools, distributing to restaurants, right? Food, right? We thought we are going in for our platform, saying that we are good in inventory, pre-allocation, policies, procedures, multi-data model, multi-ERP. And we walked in and they said, you know what, we want you to apply AI/ML, determining, right, when you ship this food product to this particular customer, how long of a shelf life should you give them? Instead of them asking for a shelf life, they want to do AI/ML and determine what kind of shelf life I should give them so that it's favorable to them and favorable to you, right? And we were thinking, this is, selling chicken. Who would apply, right? And I agree with Venkat, right? This is all business driven. This is nothing to do with technology. So the challenge we faced was that we had to overcome, right? I thought AI/ML is an independent engine algorithm running and making some decisions, right? Now I need to embed this in an interactive workflow and make a business decisions on the fly when I'm going and allocating an inventory and picking it, or when I'm going and keeping the temperature in the cooler at the right level, right? And this is becoming a different business case. It's not it is not something fancy, I don't want to touch anymore. We see a real need right now. Right. And as Venkat said, we are now after, where are these guys, right? How do we hire them? So
I love
that's
it.
where we are right now.
Shan, I love the different conversation, the one that your example there, that is, you're reaching and you're having the right conversation when it's not so focused right there in the moment. It's going upstream. It's going back to root cause and how can we make the business better, the business model better. Okay, Allison, Venkat and Shan have shared a lot there as we talk about AI and ML in the retail industry. Your thoughts?
So yeah, there's been a lot. I'm taking notes, and something that got me thinking, there was a recent article I read from Lockheed Martin. They partnered with, I believe, Amazon for Alexa and Cisco on the Orion spacecraft, and talking about those different technology pieces that play into things. And it reminds me of, they say that you can't be everything to everyone, right? And so you have a lot of companies that they try to be everything to everyone and they fail miserably. And so some of them do it pretty well, but most of the time we go to certain brands or certain companies because we know they're really good at something for us. And it kind of reminds me, these partnerships that they're talking about, especially the technology piece and the AI, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of these kind of partnerships, going back to the partnerships, a lot more of these, because the people that are really good at that kind of thing are going to lend their expertise to the people that are really good at something else.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds. Is kind of what I'm hearing you say. And by the way, you're talking about Orion. Sorry, gosh, Orion spacecraft. How about that James Webb Space Telescope and that mission? As we're recording this here today, I want to say they're about 3/4 of the way to the L2 orbit, and thousands of things have had to go right. And it is just fascinating to watch that. Talk about I'm sure the AI, the ML, and all the technology at play there. I'll have to keep our finger on the pulse. Okay, one more question. When it comes to artificial intelligence, machine learning, I want to Venkat and Shan, if we can get y'all's Reader's Digest version or answer to this question. I was looking for I actually subscribe to Reader's Digest. I'm probably one of 7 folks that still get that magazine, but it's still around. So, out of stock. How often have we heard that the last couple of years, right? Despite our best planning, all these curveballs, you name it. Venkat walked through some of the challenges earlier in the conversation. We've seen a wide variety of product shortages. Some of that, beyond the planning, some of that has been due to expired and damaged products, right? So, Venkat, again, succinct answer. How does AI and ML help here?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think it's a great applicability of AI ML. Ability if I look at AI and ML, it's nothing but prediction, right? If I have to simplify to the corest point. So an ability to predict when a specific product is going to be expired, or a specific product will not have a demand, or even creating a demand for those products is all about prediction, end of the day, right? And when I talked about what machine does well, is about able to scale and look at all the different disparate data points, across the board, whether looking at the weather data, whether it's looking at the competition data, whether it's looking at historical data, and able to provide a meaningful and a decision-making process. Some of them, in some companies, is completely automated. AI is making decisions. In some cases, the AI recommends where the human makes the actual decision because of several factors to it. When you look at whether it's a product shortage, an ability to kind of predict when that will happen and what foreseeable circumstances, or even doing what if scenario modeling, for example, to look at it, or even projecting certain unforeseeable disruption to see what might happen, or power of AI and ML that you can do, right? And when you look at deep learning, and obviously, if you ask how deep learning works, everybody will have their own. It's like try to explain the quantum computing or quantum mechanics. So it's similar to deep learning. When you look at the deep learning, one of the aspects of machine learning has such a power to look at those in terms of the neural networks and what possibility that can do. All of the problems that you talked about, whether it's product shortages, product expiry, able to look at the demand. I think AI and ML has an interesting part to play there. And it's already doing, if you look at Amazon, is driven by AI ML predominantly. Right. And they're successful. One of the things I forgot to say, Amazon, even though it's a customer obsession company, they are successful not because of the experience, because of their supply chain.
Yes. I love that. They are obsessed with their customers, and they reinvent their understanding of their customers, it seems like, by the hour. I love that. Certainly dynamic. Shan, your take. Again, we're talking out of stocks, expired, damaged products. Really quick, how can AI ML help there?
As Venkat pointed out, right? So when you say damaged product or out of stock, traditionally without AML as a supply chain consultant, I'm always thinking, right, is the inventory there? Is the delivery going to happen? Right? Did I do a cycle count? Did I look into the delivery signal from transportation? I'm always looking into the data, right? I'm not looking into a pattern. But the data could be wrong too. But the moment AML is implemented, it can predict not only the right data, it can predict the wrong data, right? The data could be correct, meaning Scott may be saying, I'm going to deliver to you, but AA is going to say, you know what? Every December, Scott fails because instead of shipping, he will go to Disney, right? so AI/ML is definitely going to add more business value in terms of out of stock. Then not only that, you were also asking about planning, right? I pretty much told my consultants there's no point in doing any more planning based on traditional data. If you're not applying AI/ML in your planning and forecasting, forget about it. You would rather throw a dart and just say buy something for a budget and just come up with some algorithm to go sell it, rather than just wasting your time on the traditional forecasting and planning, right? I know Venkat is a big fan of AI/ML. He focuses with a ton of scientists. It's hard for any product company to catch up. There are certain enterprises that are so ahead in that game,
Yep.
And his company is one of them. And we definitely want to recognize the fact that there's a reason why these companies are very innovative, right? Because of one point you mentioned is digital, right? Even 10 years ago, few enterprises realized 50% of the business have to go digitally if they have to survive. Right, and as now Venkat is pointing out, if you can bring in AI/ML, then definitely you will be ahead of the game in 10 years.
You'll be built to not just survive but thrive.
Yep.
Okay, and I love how Allison, he said, forget about it. And I'm not gonna be able to get that like The Sopranos or something. But I love how Shan threw that in there. Maybe one of y'all can do a better impersonation than I can. But Allison, what'd you hear between our two friends here?
Yeah, the challenges involved of that out of stock and inventory with AI, I think we're constantly living it as from the user experience too, right? I had just logged on this morning to find something, put it in my cart, went to go check out, and it's like out of stock. I'm like, it says it's in stock. I refreshed, I tried a different browser, I went back, I still got an error. So tiny little frustrating things like that from a user perspective kind of puts things into perspective from the other side of things, and being able to again write the programs or facilitate the team that is ultimately writing the AI that feeds into whether or not your inventory is read in real time or how that works. And I mean, it's just these teeny tiny little pieces that ultimately make up this massive wave.
You're right. Absolutely right. Okay. For the sake of time, I want to get to, even though Venkat said he didn't have a crystal ball, we're going to pretend both of y'all do. And by the way, Allison, you're not getting out of this question here. I want to talk about here now that we're in 2022, what is one thing that business leaders can expect more of here in this new, hopefully better year, right? 2021, I think, was a good year when you look at learning, you look at some of these partnerships, you look at some of the ways that we got past some of these old and new challenges. But I think all of us globally are hoping for a much better year for everyone here in 2022, and hopefully getting into truly a post-pandemic environment. But Venkat, give us a bold prediction. What's one thing that business leaders can expect more of here in 2022?
I think if you have learned something from 2022 is embrace uncertainty, right? I think that's going to be the key. Given all the disruption that we have seen because of COVID and other things, that whether it's geopolitical changes or pandemic, obviously pandemic, or hopefully endemic this year. But one thing that we should never forget that we have learned in the last 2 years, and I think probably we'll step back 5 years from now, a lot of case study will happen, how we went through this disruption, once in a lifetime event that we have seen through pandemic, is embrace uncertainty, right? What that means, I'm being very general about uncertainty. Uncertainty, when you look at supply chain is only probably never had a risk management at all. Contingency planning was not there. You look at just-in-time manufacturing is right out of the window in what happened with respect to COVID. So the most important learnings that I would say is embrace uncertainty and treat every crisis as an opportunity, right? Is what I would actually say, right? I think that's, for me personally, that's the learning that I would see. Obviously, the technology will happen. I think a lot of innovation will be there. AI startups will come on board. Hopefully, consumer shifts is happening. Hopefully, we can go back to new industries can come back, and the industries which got destroyed due to COVID will also come back. But for me, the most important learning is embrace uncertainty and treat every crisis as an opportunity.
I love that. I want to share. Amazon has been mentioned a ton of times here. It seems like throughout the conversation, as it probably is mentioned a lot of times throughout any conversation related to supply chain and beyond these days. Venkat's talking about embracing uncertainty. Jeff Bezos, whether you like him, you love him, or you don't like him, whatever, you got to admire his business intellect. He said, quote, "What we need to do is always lean into the future when the world changes around you and when it changes against you. What used to be a tailwind is now a headwind. You got to lean into that and figure out what to do, because he says complaining isn't a strategy," end quote. I love that. Okay, Shan, crystal ball time. What is one big, bold, fearless prediction you've got that business leaders can expect in 2022?
So in my view, enterprises are going to realize their supply chain, whether you call that as an innovation or transformation, right? They have to force themselves, they're going to force themselves into a loop where it is not, I have to come up with one strategy one time, right? As Venkat said, right? So it's, I need to manage the uncertainties. It could happen every week or every month or every quarter, right? So that means I should be ready and resilient enough with my supply chain, with my technologies, or with my technology roadmap, right? It could be new things, right? So that's where they will go after. They will, the enterprises will be built to, as you said, right, to thrive, and they will be the one will be in the market, right? People who think about, I have to survive. I don't think they're going to survive. It's going to be the world of who can manage this uncertainty, then who can build a resilient supply chain, right? Who's open enough to, for new technologies, and they are the one going to explode. I don't think business growth is going to be an issue for them. Even if you looked into the last few months, right? Look into the, even UPS, look into what they reported, right? Look into Ahold or look into Publix and what they reported, right? And the companies who can reinvent themselves, who can be resilient in their supply chain, they are doing pretty good. The challenges they are facing are different right now, right? Capacity and labor shortage and technologies and other things. But those are the companies, going to survive. And I don't see there is a room for laggards anymore.
Okay. So we said bold and fearless. Shan brought it. So Allison, Venkat, and Shan have set a pretty high standard. So Allison, what is your take on what folks can expect, business leaders can expect in 2022?
Shan just said, if you're a slacker, get in the back of the line. That was what he just said. Well, yeah, no, I think my crystal ball overlaps a little bit. The two of them, their discussion that really got me thinking about that old school mentality of playing cards close to the vest, kind of that easy to fall back into as a business owner, to think, oh, I can't tell people what I'm thinking. That's got to go away. And I think that the idea of competitors working together and working to facilitate bigger revenue for everybody, bigger margins for everybody, makes me think of, yes, there's a pie, and yes, everybody gets a slice, and everybody's concerned about that size of slice. But what if the pie was bigger and you still got that same slice, but ultimately that piece is bigger? So that's, I think, where companies are going to really start becoming more successful in those partnerships. And then, yeah, ultimately just what Shan said, where it's businesses thinking differently. I think that's going to be real key.
I'm with you. As long as the pie can be pecan, I am with you step for step, Allison.
It's pecan.
All right, folks. We have had quite a conversation, covered a lot of ground, went deep in some areas, which, hey, in an environment that we're getting through right now with so many roads we're at the intersection of, you're not going to solve anything in an hour. And I really appreciate Venkat's and Shan and you, Allison, kind of as a pseudo guest host, weighing in on some things and helping us get through what we're seeing from a technology standpoint, a customer experience standpoint, those consumer promises, and what's to come. All right, so let's go around the horn, make sure everyone knows how to connect with our panel here. Venkat, let's start with you. Venkat, how can folks connect with you?
I'm active on LinkedIn, so they can actually search me on LinkedIn and get connected on LinkedIn. And I would be happy to talk to folks or exchange ideas or being a sounding board. They can use me in whatever the fashions. I'm very passionate about technology, supply chain, data analytics. So looking forward to meeting the like-minded peoples.
I love that. And Venkat, on behalf of our entire team here, congratulations on your newest addition to the family. That's exciting. We'll have to get some pictures and get caught up as you progress through 2022 with that new addition. So that's wonderful to hear about. Venkat Gopalan, Chief Digital Officer, Chief Technology Officer, and Chief Data Officer with Belcorp. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you, Scott.
You bet. All right. Shan, great to have you back. Always a pleasure. I'm still blown away with what you're doing in your free time with the orphanage. We're going to have to talk more about that. We'd love to find a way to support you and that initiative if we can. That is just so admirable. So we'll have to connect offline. But how can folks connect with you and UCBOS, Shan?
I'm active on LinkedIn. I operate my own LinkedIn. Then, as you know, there is a marketing team which operates my Twitter and other things, but definitely LinkedIn. I am always active. That's the way I'm. Even my college buddies and all kinds of people who are in the industry and supply chain and analysts. Right, I'm connected through LinkedIn, and that's the only professional forum that I see. They can definitely find me there. And UCBOS, is on LinkedIn. It's also UCBOS.com. They can also reach out to Larry Layden, who's leading our business development as an SVP. Definitely, and he's launching today a pilot program in production for $50,000 all inclusive. So they can be in the lookout for that. Right, any type of complex projects that the enterprises want to do, no strings attached, for 3 months. All inclusive, meaning you get the cloud software, you get the cloud, all consulting included, all high-end supply chain consulting included for 3 months for that small amount, and no strings attached.
We are wheeling and dealing here on Supply Chain Now. Shan, thank you so much. Great to have you back. I love to see the growth at the UCBOS team, and I really appreciate what you brought here today, and especially just some of the stories and some of the conversations you are having out there that are different than everyone else. That's so important. So thank you so much, Shan Muthuvelu, CEO at UCBOS.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You bet. We'll have you back soon. Allison, gosh, it seems like with Venkat and Shan, we could solve a lot of industry ills. Got one heck of a dynamic duo. Your thoughts, and let's make sure folks know how to connect with you and WinTech.
Oh, it's great seeing people this passionate in the industry, because the stuff's going to get done. And what they say is, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So I'm sure that the two of them will be just fine in solving all of the problems. No, I'd love to connect with people. I'm on LinkedIn. Find me under Allison Giddens. Would love to connect.
Wonderful. And Allison Giddens with the award-winning WinTech team here in Metro Atlanta. Always a pleasure to do these conversations with you. Folks, hopefully y'all enjoyed this conversation and learned as much as I did as we walked through these topics here with Venkat, Shan, and Allison. If you like these conversations, check us out at supplychainnow.com. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts from. But hey, most importantly, be like Shan in particular, all of y'all, but Shan, man, with what he's doing in his free time, hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com, and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.